Well, I was just going to say, so for example,
Mhm.
with some of the traumatic events in my life, at first they wore me down and I was in a drain going down with it. But it took me a while to want to get out and want to get better and want to fight for other women that have experienced that. When I was going through this forgiveness for the
Mhm.
attacker, I had to reflect back on what I've done to hurt other people. Well, grief was created by God, and there's a reason behind it because that's part of our healing process. And if you have sadness or feelings of unworthiness, there's something there that you need to grieve.
I guess my question really here is, how do you identify that you've gone through trauma? My guest today is Ann Payton. She is a coach. She's an author, Amazon best-selling author, I should add. She is a trauma and adversity coach, and she works with people that have gone through adversity and might be still struggling with that and causing some limiting beliefs or thoughts that you are not enough, and that might even be stopping you from fulfilling everything that God has called you to do as a business owner. So without much ado, I just want us to dive into this conversation and just explore some of those limiting beliefs and how we can overcome it, and also share some resources that we can continue to use in our daily lives. Thank you so much, Ann Payton, for coming on today. How are you
Oh,
doing?
thank you, Victoria. I appreciate it. I'm doing well.
I love your smile. I'm so thankful that you're here, and I just appreciate you so much.
Well, I
And
appreciate you. I've learned a lot from you and your experiences as well.
oh, thank you. Thank you. But this conversation is very hot and heavy, and I feel like maybe it's not even talked um about enough because maybe we're ashamed, but there's a lot of things that are stopping us as business owners from moving forward, from progressing, from becoming everything that God has deposited into us, and I know you see those every single time, and so just share with us a little bit about, some of the struggles that you see women in particular go through that stop them from living their full life to their full potential.
Yes, and lately, with some of the people that I've been working with, I'm hearing that their feeling of themselves is they are just not enough. And I think I would say probably everybody at one point or another has felt that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you had a major trauma or struggle. Maybe it was just, your parents were doing the best they could with what they knew and experienced, but maybe some of the verbiage that you heard in your household didn't always lift you up. Um,
Mhm.
but I think that's something that also can be triggered a lot, just throughout, and, maybe that's something that someone said, or maybe, someone asked a question and it may have just triggered something, and you might, you know, in a moment where no one sees, but on the inside you're screaming, and on the outside you're trying to continue what your agenda is for that day, and so I do work a lot with identity,
Mm.
and I just know right away I will put it out there, and I have in my book that through some of the struggles that I've lived through, there's no doubt in my mind that Jesus saved me, and
Yeah.
more than once, and probably many times that I'm not even aware of, since He is, looking over us.
Right. So I want to just maybe step back a little bit and define trauma.
Well, the first thing that I would say is trauma is different for everybody.
Mm.
Um, it depends on your experiences and your upbringing. Maybe you have a thicker skin and someone verbally attacks you, and it may not affect you as much as it would with someone else. It depends on that person and their experience. But if you have had like a verbal attack or something that you struggled through and you're not sure it's trauma, then I do have a questionnaire to help you figure that out on my website. But some of those questions are, it's asking you, what are you feeling? What did you feel when it happened? Were there anxiety or questions or sadness that continued on days and maybe even weeks afterwards? And,
Okay.
maybe it was a few days of sadness, but maybe then it brought up or triggered other things where you literally go into, um, the feelings of unworthiness or maybe even self-loathing. And then you're talking about that step towards trauma. And then of course there is a process, and I just want everybody to know that there is joy in life even after adversity or trauma.
Okay,
So
so sorry, go ahead. I
no,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
mention that. Okay, so I grew up in Nigeria and there's a lot of hardship. I see it all around me. It was almost a norm because everybody just had one thing or the other. And in the beginning of your conversation or responding to that, you talked about we all have, we might have thick skin. And I want to just kind of dive in a little bit into that because I feel like I'm not sure if I want to say that I want to say that I have um experienced trauma or adversity, but I want to learn because maybe what I see as not being adversity or trauma is trauma, and it's showing up in certain things in my life. You see what I mean, right? Because we just all grew up as this is what life is about. Like, we don't have running water sometimes there's no electricity, your parents are tired, they're trying everything they can, they snap at you, or you don't like, it's just like for us it was life.
Right.
And so, and obviously, there's a lot of sadness that comes with that because, as a kid, you don't understand what's going on and you're crying and you don't just, so, and just help me understand that because I know there might be somebody out there listening and my Nigerians can testify. We go through a lot, So,
I
like,
know. And
yeah.
then if you haven't experienced it like you have and your other Nigerians, it's hard for someone that didn't live with those struggles of just normal everyday needs.
Hmm.
It's different.
Right. So, like, how do you, I don't know, like, can you please help me understand? I know you said like there's pain for a few times, can continue on after that experience. Is it like a one-time experience or is it like over a period of a lifetime? Like just trying to make sure. I guess my question really here is how do you identify that you've gone through trauma? Do you see what I mean?
Yes, yes. Well, the thing that I'd like to say right now is struggles and trauma and adversity are cumulative. So
Okay.
you may have experienced one thing growing up in hardships and um, parents or people snapping at you, and if you took that to heart and maybe felt unloved or unworthy from that, that might be one thing that's tucked inside there in your soul. And you may not think about it ever again. But then along your life, something else happens, and then it's in there and it kind of glues together, and then maybe something
Mm-hmm.
else comes there. Now, one person may have 1 to 3 things, and they go, right into some of the physical and mental symptoms that we get when we have had trauma or adversity. And maybe someone else had to go through 6, 7, 8 of them before they accumulated enough in their own um, soul and identity. So one person may have a maybe because of upbringing have a tougher exterior and a better mental I don't want to say health, but a mental attitude to throw that stuff off and not let it sink in and fester.
Ah, I
And
see what you
that's
mean.
why you will find with one person, something can happen a couple times and it starts to fester and it becomes an anxiety or affects their daily lives. Whereas another person, it's much more that happens to them before they get to that point.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. So, and I something that came to mind, and I think a lot of foreigners can expats that live in the United States can maybe relate with this a little bit where, because we've gone through a lot of adversity, like, hardship, it's almost like we use that as a driving force, to like
Mhm.
do better, seek better in a way. Do you see what I mean? Especially when you're in
Yes.
a country where, there's a lot of opportunities. So, like, do you see that often? Like, would you consider that as like some kind of trauma, but like maybe being spun into a positive thing? Like, I don't know if I'm making sense.
Well, let me try to reframe that question back
Uh-huh.
to you to make sure I'm getting it. That
Okay.
similar to some foreigners that may not have began their life in the United States, where we do have quite a few comfortable things that are probably more efficient than other countries. Like you said, not having running water or the electricity. I know when my family moved to Mexico, we couldn't buy toilet paper for 2 months because there just wasn't any.
Right, right. Yes. It's the normal, yeah, way of life. Yeah.
So for me, coming who was born in the United States and then thrown into that environment, that
Mm.
was like, I can't believe this is happening. But if you are in that environment in a third world country and you've experienced that over and over, and you have three ways already just from your experience on how to handle what that is,
Mhm.
and then they have an opportunity to maybe seek more better and get to the United States. They may
Mhm.
have I would call it, they may have a hunger that's greater to seek out better than
Yeah.
maybe someone that started here and had never experienced living or being in a third world country for a longer period of time, because it wasn't until my high school years that I even experienced a third world country. So and this is just based on my experience. I have no idea what living in Nigeria is all about. And I don't think I ever could unless I could, put my feet in there. And
Right.
and I don't know what it would be like growing up there, but I think that there you get used to the things that you have had for years. And so that might be why we saw, even when the first foreigners came over on the ship to the
Mhm.
United States, who were those small business people? They were Italians and Englishmen and all of the people that were flooding the United States at that time. And those are the ones that started these businesses, and some of them became just grand. And so the
Mhm.
hunger may be better, and that experience of those struggles may have made them tougher.
Right, right. So in some cases, those experiences can turn out to be a positive thing, but I still feel like there might still be some drawbacks to it, like, and I know you see this all the time. But in one end, and I'm thinking about even here in our backyard, with people living in very, very, poverty ridden society community in our, here, and just being held back and not having enough, the same equal amount of resources. I see that some people find it harder to have the drive to overcome that. You know what I mean? Like, so I guess on one hand, some people can take that and be like, you know what, I'm gonna have that. It builds that hunger in them to go for more. Whereas in some cases, it's like, the burden of the lack, or the pain or the limitation is just so heavy, and it's hard to, like, you know, break through that.
Right, exactly. And I think if you're looking at struggles and the necessities of life, there is a difference. I think if as you move more towards something um, even maybe more traumatizing, like some sort of a domestic violence or unwanted sexual advances, or
Mhm.
even just our soldiers see so much violence, and when
Yes.
you see those pictures, you can't get those pictures completely out.
Right.
So those types of things I think would affect everybody, not the same, but obviously we would all struggle with those. And even
Right.
if you saw such devastation in your country, um, the accumulative effect of that, like you just said, it could be for someone, well, I'm getting out there and I'm fighting for all of our people and I'm going to do this. And then there may be someone that, something happened to them as a soldier and they don't have it in them because they have been beaten down to have that get up and go and fight for all other soldiers. Um,
Right.
so part of that I think is built in our psyche, and that comes from our higher being.
Wow, that's so
So,
so yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, so for example, with some of
Mhm.
the traumatic events in my life, at first they wore me down, and I was in uh, a drain going down with it. But it took me a while to want to get out and want to get better and want to fight for other women that have experienced that.
Ah.
So it
Oh.
can also be a delayed response.
Ooh. Right. Could also be a delayed response. And I feel like, man, this is such a, so like, my brain is thinking about so many scenarios and everything here, but I am thinking about how do we, like, how this begin to, like, show up in our daily lives, because I find that there are some times where, especially when you have that tougher, tend to have that tougher skin, or you feel like you've moved past that time in point where a certain situation happened to you.
Hmm.
But it seemed like, I know in one of your books, Solution Oversight and Hope Plus Courage, you were talking about how they still kind of like, you still have those experiences, still hold us back somehow if we do not deal with them appropriately.
That's true. If there is a process of overcoming and healing, and that can be for, somebody's death, some sort of attack or violence. Um, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, Victoria.
That's okay.
Can you repeat the question?
I just was asking about how they come, like, those experiences, if undealt with, how they show up and stop us from, fulfilling our full potential. And, basically, I'm thinking as a business owner, I know that, we want to be successful. We want to do all of these things. But there might be a time, and I can relate here, where, it's time for us to make a decision, and it's a big decision, but then we have a lot of what ifs, a lot of, you're thinking through why you feel like you're not enough, or why you don't deserve this type of opportunity, or like why this is not for should not be for me, or oh, am I, like, can this be for me, or should I be doing, we have all these different, ideas that come up that stop us from really, really pursuing our dreams.
Yes, and I think I can use myself as an example for this, for some of the more violent traumas that I went through when I was younger, that I did not
Hmm.
properly get help. And so they just, stayed there buried. And I remember when I uh, ran for local office in 2016, and the hatred, our country's depolarized, or is polarized. We need to undo that. But the hatred that I found affected me so much. And part of that was probably because I had hate for a perpetrator. I also had hate for myself for, whatever I thought my fault was. And then
Right.
the one moment in front of a crowd where a person came up to me and just, 4 inches in front of my face, just yelling at me and
Oh my God.
degrading me, and because I was in the wrong party, or how dare you. And then literally he then spit on me as if I was a piece of dirt. Well, I might have been able to handle that much better if I would have handled that former trauma and actually went through the process of overcoming and healing from it. But I did
Mm,
not. So
mm,
that added to it. And so when I finally started the I had gone through some of the process, but when I finally said, and I put my foot down, I'm finishing this process. I'm getting over this because there are so many women out there that need my help.
mhm.
That was when I finished the process. So I
Wow.
don't think I would have been able to go out and write a book or coach people or speak to people until I finished that last step. So if you're a businesswoman and you are in a business and you're doing pretty good, but you just feel like there is something there that might be holding you back,
Mm,
I would take some time to reflect. And it's not going to be just 1 hour or one out walk out in nature. It's going, give put this in your calendar weekly until you can sometimes pinpoint it. I've had feelings where I'm like, I don't understand why I'm feeling so, I just get this overwhelming feeling of sadness or anxiety. And I'm like, I have no idea where this is coming from. And when that happens, I'm like, okay, I need to take a moment. I need to go outside. I need to talk. I need to walk. I need to pray. I need to meditate. And then from there, if I still haven't figured out, then I have to schedule several other times to do that.
so basically, we have to get back in touch with our feelings. You have to do the hard work of acknowledging that this is real so that we can deal with it.
Right, because depending on what's happened, I talk in my book about good grief. Well, grief was created by God, and there's a reason behind it because that's part of our healing process. And if you have sadness or feelings of unworthiness, there's something there that you need to grieve. And
Mm,
there are so many benefits to grieving. That's part of our step of releasing, of acknowledging these feelings that I have,
right.
and just acknowledging them, and then, reflecting on them and going through some worksheets so you can then release them. It doesn't mean that that you're going to forget it, but
I
you're
was getting ready to
releasing
say
it.
that. I was getting ready to say, like, does that completely get rid of it, or like, is that also a process through a journey? Because obviously, like you said, it's a compilation of different things sometimes, and sometimes it's a
Mhm.
one event. So,
Right.
like, even the healing process is sounds like it's a journey as well.
Yes, because you're going to go with reflecting and figuring out, first of all, what are your feelings. And
Mm-hmm.
I've brought I when I've been in coaching and counseling, I've had people show me that feelings wheel, because sometimes it's hard to figure out what you're feeling. But then
Yeah.
you can kind of narrow it down. And so once you figure out what you're feeling, then you can start um, figuring out what your process is. Do you need to forgive someone else who did something wrong to you, or do you need to forgive yourself for making some mistake that you can't seem to forgive yourself for? um, and I will throw this out here right now because I think it's so very important. This one phrase that I got from a counselor has helped me forgive myself, forgive relatives, forgive all kinds of people. And
Mm,
what you need to remember, like when I go back into my teens and I think, Ann, oh, how stupid, why did you do that?
mm,
I have to say to myself, Ann, you did the best you could with the
mm.
knowledge you had and the experiences you had up to that point at whatever age it was. So let's just
Right.
say 22 years old. Okay,
Mm,
now, and you're much older than that, and you have more wisdom and more experience and more knowledge. You can't expect the 22-year-old Anne to know all that you know now. And
right.
why is that important? So then I can forgive myself. And then I think about that when I've had, spats with family members.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my dad, at that point in his life, he was doing the
Mm-hmm.
best he could.
Good.
He was doing
Yeah.
the best he could with the knowledge and experiences he had.
Mm.
And I even
Good.
look back to someone that attacked me, and you think, how can you forgive that? Well,
Right. That's gotta be hard.
that is hard. But then you start to think of that phrase. That person attacked me. I don't, whatever his situation was, I don't know what it was. Was he doing the best he could? I don't
Mm,
know. But
yeah.
he had the knowledge and experience that he had up to that point. Now I can
Right.
either, hold bitterness for that, or I can say there's two things that he can do.
Mm.
He can maybe improve his life, get to know God, and he will be saved. Or if he doesn't and he continues to do wrong to others and hurt others, then I still need to give that to God for him to handle.
Mm.
And let's pray. He is a human being, he is a soul. Yes, he hurt me, but I forgave him. And now I actually pray that he comes to the Lord, because how do I know? I think he probably did the best he could with the knowledge and experience that he had. And that's how I let it go.
Is good. That is so good. I just was thinking about, when I was very, very young, I remember always thinking to myself, whenever there's like a major event or someone did anything to me, I always felt like I heard the voice. Or maybe it was just me thinking like in the core of this person, they are a good person. Like whoever the person that hurt me, like in the core of them, that they are a really good person. But maybe something or the devil or whatever, it's just like was just using them. And in that very moment, because I humanized them, it helped me feel better about the situation that I might be. Because I felt I always feel like, they're good, and maybe they didn't even mean to. Like I
Right.
don't know if it's like, but I just remember as you were saying that, every time that happened to me, it made me feel better in that instance. Like it was easier for me to forgive because I feel like they didn't know or they couldn't help it in a way. Even though obviously it hurts, and which I
Right.
know that a lot of people are gonna hear this and they're gonna say, yeah, but it still hurt me and it still raped me and it still and these are valid, but like so I guess depending on the scenario, it's harder or easier to forgive. But what do you say to people that, they have a physical reminder of that instance that they went through and it's harder to forgive?
Well, I think what you said is phenomenal because
Mm,
you knew that in the core of them there is a good person. And
mm,
I know it's kind of cliche now that you sometimes hear that hurting people hurt people.
yeah.
Well, when I was going through this forgiveness for the
Hmm.
attacker, um, I had to reflect back on what I've done to hurt other people.
Mm,
I may not have attacked someone physically, but when have I been that evil one? When have I done something that tore someone apart, whether it be verbally or, there's just so
physically,
many.
mentally. Yeah.
Mentally, there's so many ways to hurt others, and
Right.
sometimes it's unintentional, but I know of instances in my past where it was intentional. I was not being a good person, but I had whatever it was, this hate or something inside me that I probably hadn't released, and I threw that up on somebody else.
Mm,
So then I start to think, yeah, what he did to me was really bad. But in the
mm,
sight of God, what I've done to others is
yeah.
just as bad. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a physical or like, I think of a lady that had gone through such an awful attack and a
Mhm.
rape that she cannot have children. That's something that
Mm,
she herself has to live with.
right.
But
That's
I
hard.
would still go back to the point where how do I know when I intentionally try to hurt someone that didn't block them from
Mm,
somebody? Maybe they still think about me as a younger person and what I said to them in high school or college that just tore their heart apart. I don't know. I could have done something like that.
right.
And I know that there have been experiences. And so to me, I think hurting people do hurt people. And you may have had so much done to you, and it's not fair. It is not fair. And it doesn't really make it any right knowing that you've done something to somebody else. But it somehow, in a small way, levels the playing field
Mm,
because none of us are good completely.
yeah. Yeah. Only Jesus is good. Yeah. Wow. Like I never thought of it that way. I never thought about it that way.
Well, it's
Cause
funny when I went, rewriting my book and reviewing it, these things that I have done have popped in my head.
and sometimes we just have to think about those too and think about how we have hurt people intentionally or unintentionally and what that has done to those people as well, like you just said. Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So part of this journey, I'm trying to like make sure. Okay. So the first step is just reflecting and acknowledging that there was a trauma and then just, write it and acknowledging your emotions and also seeing all the sides, like that point of
Yes.
view from that person as your sides and your contribution and things like that. So what would you say is the next step for this healing journey?
The next thing in which I have found healing many times in my life is writing about it. It doesn't mean that you have to write a book. It doesn't mean that you have to write a letter of forgiveness and send it to them. It doesn't mean that you write a letter to yourself. It. it can be so many different things. But maybe
Mhm.
there, once you have reflected and you know your feelings and you've looked at all sides of it, that's when you may have to write a letter of forgiveness to someone, or you may have to write a letter to God or Jesus saying, I need that person to forgive me, but that person, or I need to forgive him what he did to me, but he's no longer around. How do I
Right.
get forgiveness for that? And that's
Mm.
where again it's the prayer and the writing and the meditation and working that through Jesus and counseling and coaching, because it's not just a one and done thing.
Wow. Okay. So I'm thinking about it from two perspectives now. Someone that has something done to them and someone that did something to other people.
Hmm.
So um you had said, like writing about it, praying about it, and seeking forgiveness and things like that. But what if, how does that translate to healing? Let's say, for instance, in that example where, the lady is not unable to now have children.
Hmm.
The forgiveness has been done. They've gone through all that. But like, how do they reconcile that with their present reality? Like, I still cannot have a child. Like,
Right. Well, if she cannot contact that person, or it may not be safe to connect with that person again, it has to be done. It has to be done almost physically. And that's one reason why I say write about it. I wrote so much in my journal about the man that attacked me, days writing about it. And I would be writing so hard with that pen or pencil in the journal that you literally saw the imprint of this pencil on the other side of the page. So writing about it, writing about my feelings, even I have in my journals where I am literally cursing at them.
I
I'm
was gonna
cursing
say,
at them in my letters. I'm cursing in my journal and
I,
I'm saying, "How dare you?
I was gonna
How
say, like, do
dare
you
you?"
do you feel like the writing about it's like, does it bring up more emotion that makes you even more mad or even more upset? And does that go away eventually, or does that help? After, I guess I'm thinking of it as like, a bottle that is like, like a bottle of soda that's been shaking up a lot,
Mhm.
and it's just like ready to
Mhm.
combust, and
Right.
yeah, and you're just like ready to explode. And maybe what I'm hearing you say is like the writing about it and all the emotion that is being brought up is necessary to just let it go.
It it has to come out to heal. And if
Mm.
you, some people will do really major physical exercise to get it out. Like they may be running and they're saying, you know, you SOB, this, you had no right. Or they're writing and, writing not on a computer. I guess you could like break your computer if you're so angry.
Ah,
But
right.
in writing, it was emotional and physical, because I'm actually writing and I'm pressing hard and the emotions are coming up and I am crying and I am yelling while I'm writing. That had to come out. It has to come
Right.
out. If you can't release that, you can't get to the next step.
Wow.
And that's why I think it's so easy to bury, 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 and bury it for
Mhm.
so many years that you then have troubles getting it out.
Mm. I
And not
just
even, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead. Like, I just, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just remember one thing, which, I don't know if there was anyone in the cemetery at the time when I was doing this, but when my
Mhm.
father died, I'm sitting in the cemetery right there where my dad was buried, and I am on my knees and I am yelling at God, and I am so angry at God, and I'm using language with God that I shouldn't be using, and that, the tears were flowing and the anger was out, and and then I left there and I wrote about it, and then I was okay because I got it out. And sometimes if a perpetrator is not around, or they've passed to the next life, God can handle this. Take
Yeah.
that anger and release and say, God, I don't know what to do. I have this anger for this person. They did this to me, and it's now with me for the rest of my life. I can't have children. And, you know, he's there for that too.
I was just getting ready to say that, like, I know some people might listen to this and say, well, you're supposed to be a Christian. How should you, why would you be yelling at God and using language with him? But like, I think you just hit it in the head when you said he's got us. He wants us to be real with him and
Yeah.
bring all our troubles to him and say, you know what? This is all of it. Like, this is how I'm feeling right now. And whew,
I know, and it is a release, and
yeah.
he can handle it. And yeah, I'm sure there were people in that cemetery, because I wasn't paying attention to anything but yelling
Just
at God.
right, like, and I think we just need to be more vulnerable and be okay with being vulnerable with God,
Yes, yes,
and being real with ourselves, because I can see how that leads to the release and the healing. Like, there was this movie that I watched some time ago, and I think it's Why Did I Get Married? Either one or two, and it was Jackson, and she was just she took a bat and she just went at everything in the house, just to because it has just bubbled up for so much, and I know, there are sometimes when I see people that are like just breaking things just feels good to just let it go, let it out, like I just wanna, just to release. So I would say, like, maybe even in addition to writing, just like finding what is that release for you, and just including yelling to God. I feel like we've mentioned multiple
yeah,
things here, like
yeah,
writing, journaling, like yelling to God and saying, look, or breaking things in a healthy manner, in a controlled manner with
right.
with an expert like you. I think it's necessary to just, get that healing started.
Yeah, and there were two things that I did when I got divorced, and
Uh-huh.
I started training in Taekwondo
Mm.
and learning how to fight, and fighting that fake man that was spongy. And
Mm.
I even took our wedding dishes and went outside to a certain area where nobody was, and I pretended I was from the Greek culture, and I smashed dishes. Boom.
Wow. Wow.
Anything physical, it'll work.
Mhm.
But like
Yeah.
you said, in a healthy and safe environment, you
Environment.
certainly
Yeah.
wouldn't want to do that where you
Yeah.
would hurt yourself or somebody else.
Right. Oh wow. Yeah, I can totally feel that release. And I feel like I need to get out and let some things go too, like break some dishes, right? Wow. So like I want to like kind of draw this back into entrepreneurship, like, I feel like there's some times where we don't even know what is holding us back. And if we're fortunate to, identify that, thankfully you are there and available to help people talk through this and identify this, or stopping us from being good enough. I feel like that would really set us free, because the limiting beliefs, the thoughts of not being good enough, is just it's not acceptable. I feel like God has so much in store for us, and we just need to move past the lies of the enemies to go get what God has for us and what He wants to use us for others too.
Well, yeah, and something always comes good of it. Romans
Mm-hmm.
8:28, he turns everything into good for those who believe. And when I did start Taekwondo, I ended up getting a black belt, and that gave me so much confidence and
Yeah.
self-worth. So I had
Mm.
no idea that's what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yelling at him at the cemetery brought us closer.
Yes.
Something good is going to come out of it. And you're right. If you're in business and you feel like something's stuck,
Mm.
take the time for yourself, or get some help. Talk to a coach, or maybe you have a counselor that you work with. Reach out to them, or maybe you have a sister in Christ that has experienced several things. Sometimes just knowing that there's somebody out there that has had the same experience is comforting.
Yeah.
You're not alone. You're not the only one.
That's right. I'm not the only one. Okay, so I wanted to. I have one question before I wrap up with another question that I have. But we've talked a lot about what I feel like are the hard or easy things the hard things that are maybe easier to identify. But for a small business owner or female entrepreneur that don't even they just know that they feel stuck, but
Mhm.
it's hard for them to identify that this could be linked to a trauma. What are some of the signs that would that they should seek out or pay attention to say, look, I need the service of a professional to help
Yes,
me?
exactly. And I have some of those on my trauma checklist, which is free on my website. But I noticed for myself, because
Mhm,
what had happened to me, I buried it and just thought, "Oh, it'll go away. No
mhm,
problem." But one of the things that I noticed was, because of the physical attack, that one of the things that I noticed was I would be watching a movie or a TV show with
mhm,
a similar experience going on, and I had to leave the room.
mm,
I couldn't see it. I couldn't
mm,
watch it without feeling like my heart was gonna come out through my throat. I also
mm,
remember reading books,
mm.
and reading a book that had a similar experience in there. I
Wow.
also have, like, been, like, in, group conversations
Mhm,
where another lady would talk about her story, and there were times in the beginning that I could not contain my emotions, and I would have to leave the group
wow,
and go into the bathroom and literally sit there in the stall and bawl my eyes out and
wow.
release some of it before I
Mm,
could continue on. Now, did I understand all of that at the time? Not necessarily. But if you're seeing things like that, and there's other triggers that you'll find,
mhm.
in that checklist, if some of those things are happening or several of those things are happening, that is a good sign that you may need to, get some professional help.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about how I've heard somebody else go through this, and I can relate with that, where the moment an opportunity comes up or what seemed like an opportunity, they tell themselves about 5 to 10 ways why that is not for them and it should be not for them. It's almost like you're talking yourself out of it. And she had to catch herself telling herself, talking herself out of those situations. So it's like sometimes it can be very subtle. You know what I
Yes,
mean? And then sometimes it can be very apparent, like in your situation, but like some things, as it's a good opportunity, but like we're thinking about so many reasons why
why?
it's not for us.
And if
Like
some of that's based on fear,
mhm.
then that's a sign. What are you afraid of?
Yes, that's what I was.
Okay,
Yeah,
because there's so many things to be afraid of.
right,
So um, if part of reaching out and getting more exposure on your business is meeting people face to face or making phone calls or stuff like that, and you've dealt with a lot of rejection before, maybe your fear is of rejection, but it doesn't necessarily have to be rejection. It could be a lot of different things. And
right.
that might help a business entrepreneur if they um, need, like, for instance, one thing that I hesitated a lot, and it
Mhm.
was social media. And I know social media is needed for entrepreneurs these
And I
days.
feel like this example is going to be helpful for a lot of people because a lot of people are worried, they have the same fear. So please go ahead.
Yes, my I just hesitated and didn't do social media,
Mm,
and it took me a while.
mhm,
But for those that are viewing this podcast, maybe it's, for me, it was because I thought everything I would write or put out there, they're going to think I'm stupid.
mm,
I didn't feel like my words were eloquent enough. I felt like I didn't have big words in my vocabulary to use.
mm.
Or maybe I'd put a picture up there that, in my mind wasn't a good picture. Oh, well, they're going to think I'm ugly, or they're going to think I'm stupid, or you try to be vulnerable with your social media and write something, and then what goes through your head is, oh well, um, they're now going to think less of me,
We all will
so yeah, and it's
raise your hand if you felt any of those.
amen, sister. it,
Yes.
it does. And I
Mm,
think a lot of people, even with getting on podcasts or
mhm.
getting on and doing a video, um, we're afraid of looking stupid.
Yes.
We are so afraid of what
Yeah.
other people are going to think.
Mm,
But then if you do get out there and baby step at a time, and you put yourself out there, you then may get a response saying, "Thank you, Anne, for sharing that. Your
yes.
vulnerability is
Mm,
helping me get out of my shell. And
yeah.
seeing you stepping out makes me feel like, well, if she can do it, then I can do it."
Me too. Wow. Yes. And that is so, so powerful. Whew, okay, so I know you have talked a lot about your program. I know you have an event, in-person event workshop coming up, but you also have a free workshop that is on your website. Tell us about how we can get our hands on your resources because you've shared with us a lot about what we can do, the very first steps on, identifying this and some of the things that we can do to get on the journey of healing. But we obviously need professional help and you have a lot of resources. So tell us how we can get our hands on some of these resources and how you can help.
Okay, the best thing is to go to my website, which is annpayton.com, and that's ANNPAYTON.com. And on there, you'll find some free things. The one thing is the trauma checklist. If there is any doubt in your mind, download that for free and look
Mm,
it over and reflect on it. If you just you think you know what's going on and you just need to talk to someone on there, there is a free complimentary call on there, and we can talk. And maybe I can just give you some insight on where to go next.
mm,
Maybe it's something that I can help with, but what I want is to talk to you so I can give you insight, what I think is best for you. I'm not trying to sell you coaching. I want to see what's happening. And then if I know the best place for you to go is your a previous counselor or a minister, that's what I would encourage you to do. The
yeah.
third thing is I have a workshop on my um, website that's for free. It's an hour long. The
Okay.
workshop and the tools and the resources on that are for any adversity or trauma. However, I do specifically talk about sexual trauma. But the tools and the resources are the same, whether it's that trauma or another trauma. Okay, because the processes are similar.
Okay.
And then I also have on my website my books and my adversity university and my coaching program. That all came from my book Solutions Over Sides, and I believe it's $15 on Amazon. The link is on my website. A
Mhm.
lot of times that's a good place to start. I do have an in-person workshop that's coming up September 20th in Indianapolis. It's a half a day workshop, and it will be geared towards sexual trauma. However, as I said before on the workshop that's on the website, the tools and the resources and the learning process and the worksheets that we will be doing is relevant for any type of adversity or trauma.
Okay. And I want to add that you are also on iHeart Radio twice a week. So people can listen to you talk about this, you know, and,
Yes,
walk through some of those issues in case they are not ready yet, but they can also listen to you until they get come up with the confidence to make that move to reach out to.
absolutely. And if they go to my Facebook page, which I can give you that link as well, Victoria. I
Yeah.
have information on every radio show that's coming up, and you can tune in Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. I'll give you the link. And I do, it's a half an hour show. I talk about just, things that can help anyone get started with any of these experiences that we've talked about. And I also bring on other professionals that
Okay.
have additional knowledge and experience that I want my viewers to see as well. And then there's opportunities to find out more about them and their websites and offerings to people.
Right. And I know you also have the coffee talk on
Yes.
Facebook, which I love and I always
Oh,
listen to. Yes.
thank you very much. Yes, every Friday morning I have a short or medium coffee chat on Facebook, and just hoping to target certain things that I think a lot of people go through, and just trying to give them some value or things that they can start doing right away.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I am going to put the links to everything your Facebook, your websites, the books, and everything in the comments. So please take advantage of these resources, take advantage of the free consultation. Sometimes talking to someone goes a long way. And Anne right here is offering that. And thank you. Thank you so much again, Anne, for coming. I really appreciate this conversation. I feel like it's not, we don't have it, often enough, and we really should, because there's a lot of things stopping us from fulfilling the calling of God upon our lives. And, if we can get help, we should, and know how to get that help. So thank you again for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. And I know God has beautiful surprises for all your listeners coming up. You just have to get out there and grab
Yes,
them.
just get out there and grab them. Until next time, don't forget that. Take care.